it is now not only the FBI but also the Department of Energy that has come to the conclusion that a laboratory leak from Wuhan is the most likely cause of the pandemic, an accidental laboratory leak. What was the assessment you made when you were Prime Minister about how the pandemic started?
Well, the most likely assessment, which is what you're now referring to, was that it was a wildlife wet market. You know, your own work on this has been outstanding.
Thank you.
It's been terrific. I just think there should be a lot of focus on it, and we should know. And the problem now is the trail, as you would have known and all the research you've done, the trail runs cold. And that's why I said it at the time. I was mocked for saying it. I said there should be the ability for the WHO to send in people to go and investigate in circumstances like this, but that was resisted. And whether it started in the lab by accident, I never saw anything that would have suggested it happened on purpose. I never believed that. When choosing between a conspiracy and a stuff-up, we all know the common expression. It's not unfeasible that it would have occurred through an accident. And even the accident wouldn't have been the great mistake. Not telling anyone was the bit concerned me. I remember those early days of the pandemic. I mean, it's called COVID-19 for a reason. It didn't start in 2020, and we forget that. We're all responding. We shut the borders on the 1st of February. The National Cabinet was set up in March.
And it had been spreading for at least 2 months.
Exactly. And back in December, arguably even November. And likely November, as you've said. This was already moving. And my great issue over this has always been the lethargy of the investigation and the resistance to it. And that said something very important about what was happening in our international institutions, that where a body such as the WHO could have been so coddled and coerced that the world was denied this information that could have saved millions of people.
Do you think the search for answers at the very start was damaged because the issue was politicised because of the comments that Donald Trump made, that he thought it was a lab leak?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. Would it have... well, let me answer it this way. Do I think it would have conditioned somehow a bipartisan approach to this in the US? Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, it was in the context of an election year, and the hyper-partisanship that we've seen in the US, then I suspect that would have contributed to that. But I wouldn't want that to overshadow what I think was the real cause of it.
China's role.
Which was the role of these organisations being heavily influenced. And I think it's fair to say post-pandemic that there has been an affection for the embrace of government in many countries. What we've seen is the failure of capitalism. Well, that's nonsense. There was nothing wrong with the Australian economy had its challenges like any other economy prior to the pandemic. But the reason we came through so strongly was because we did have a solid capitalist-based enterprise economy.
The global supply chain issue has ultimately caused the high inflation.
Well,
part of the cause for it.
Fuel lines and any number of other things. But when you sort of take immigration out of your economy for 2 years, well, that's going to have effects. There will be consequences of this massive disruptive event, the most disruptive event we've seen since the Great Depression and the Second World War.